Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Wow, did I get the Edward R. Murrow Award? That's pretty good. That's not bad. That's a good award. It's a lucite block. It comes with your name on it and everything. You get it for all kinds of stuff. And I got mine. I actually got mine for September 11th coverage. 2001, not the other one, but the 2001 one. That was good. You said I was full-time radio host in Washington, D.C. It's really, I'm off at noon there, so it's kind of, most people would say it's kind of a part-time job. I wouldn't term it a full-time job. When I go home, I do some homework about the next day, but really 9 a.m. to noon, WMAL in Washington, D.C., and a lot of people, including the woman that I love, doesn't necessarily consider it to be a full-time job because I'm home all afternoon. So, what is that? I get up at a normal time and things like that. Well, it is an honor to be here, standing in the place where Rush Limbaugh normally stands or sits, as the case may be. There is a chair here, and there was a pillow in it. I removed the pillow. I thought maybe Hillary was coming in or something with a pillow in the chair like that. But I as I said, in Washington, D.C., ordinarily came up here to New York, the city that never sweeps, yesterday, and met up with Mr. Bo Snerdley, who's my shepherd for this first foray into the Excellence in Broadcasting Network across the fruited plain, I believe Rush Limbaugh refers to it, this great land of ours, America. And I did, you have to be a news guy to win that Edward R. Murrow Award. I did, don't hold it against me, give me 3 hours before you judge me. I did work for CNN for 17 years. What was I thinking? I don't know, but it was, did a thing 10 years, the last 10 years, covering the Pentagon and the intelligence community and assigned to the Pentagon. My office was in the Pentagon, where I met all kinds of interesting people, a couple of whom may come up today, including Monica Lewinsky's girlfriend. Bill Clinton's girlfriend. Her name is Monica Lewinsky. Let me straighten that one out. But I came up yesterday. And after meeting up with Mr. Snerdley at the hotel, the Super Deluxe Hotel where I stayed last night, I did what you do in New York. You go out for a walk around. You go out to kick around the neighborhood. And I went up to Central Park, and a lovely place that it is, and wandering through the neighborhood, stopping in various places to say hello to people that I've never met. And up by Columbus Circle, CNN Center, the Time Warner building up there. It's a big media conglomerate. Perhaps you've heard of it. Although, does Time Magazine still publish a magazine? Is that like 3 or 4 pages of something, advertisements, and you can find a thing or two online. Not much. They have a big building for such a small magazine. And that cable network is in there that I used to work for. And what does that have? Hundreds of viewers, I think, at this point. And I wandered by there, and I went in. That's at Columbus Circle. It's where the Upper West Side begins. And I walked into Central Park, which is always entertaining. And I saw a woman some distance away, dressed all in orange with blonde hair. And I thought, no, it can't be. It couldn't possibly be. I walked over. There was no entourage, no security. I didn't see any motorcade or anything. I walked over, and it was a tranny. And I went, wow, that's had me for a moment there. And you can say tranny because RuPaul, who is, I think, an authority on these matters, said, and a tranny. Himself? I'm not sure what the terminology is, since Facebook now has 58 different gender choices. It can often be confusing, especially in Central Park. And as I got a little further into the park, there was a young couple. They were Caucasian, if I may say. And they were I'd say they're in their 20s, and they were, how shall I say, unclean. They were kind of, they were dirty people. One of them had a long beard with food stuck in it and all kinds of things and muttering, and that was the woman. And I got up a little bit closer, and the guy was holding a sign, a cardboard sign, and he had written something there, panhandling, of course. And I apparently drug crazed. I think drug crazed is the appropriate terminology. And unclean, not clean at all. And as I got closer, the sign said, the cardboard sign they were holding up said, "Give me $1 or I'm voting for Donald Trump." Give me $1, I'm voting for Donald Trump. It's a very competitive marketplace, being a panhandler in New York City and in Central Park. So you got to come up with something more clever than the panhandler next to you. And I, of course, did not give them $1 in this particular instance because, naturally, I want them to vote for Donald Trump. I assume this will win over their votes in the Trump thing. And it was kind of strange because the woman, beard and all, looked strangely, as I mentioned earlier, a lot like Monica Lewinsky, and we've all been wondering where Monica went. I'm not sure that I have an actual certified sighting here, but I wouldn't want to leap to any conclusions. I might have to go back after the show and see if she's still there, because I know I was telling Bo Snerdley and Mike and the gang here that when I worked at the Pentagon for CNN, I worked with, or in close proximity to, Monica Lewinsky. The CNN office in the Pentagon, where I resided for the better part of a decade, was 2 doors down. This is a big building, mind you, 17 and a half miles of hallways in the Pentagon, and 2 doors down from the CNN office and the Fox office and the ABC offices, CBS, and everybody has their offices right there. 2 doors down from the CNN office, they decided to put the president's girlfriend, to park her over there, give her a job over there at the Pentagon, to keep her quiet, give her a government paycheck, all that good stuff. And we were leaving work. We would often leave work. You stay, you watch the evening news, and then you leave, and everybody leaves kind of at the same time. She worked for the Pentagon spokesman at the time, a guy named Ken Bacon. And everybody after the evening news broadcasts, 6:30 Eastern, would kind of walk out at about the same time, because you see what the competition is doing before you knock off for the day. And Monica parked in the same parking lot that I parked in, close to where we parked in. But this day, and she always walked out, and she was not famous at this time, of course. But at this time, as we were walking out, she took a left instead of taking a right to go to the parking lot. She took a left, where you might go to the subway, to the metro, to take the metro out of the Pentagon. And I said, well, where are you going? She said, oh, my car's in the shop. I got to take the metro home. And I said, well, you live in the district, right? She said, yeah. I said, where do you live? She said, I live on Virginia Avenue. I'm 820 Virginia. So that's the Watergate, isn't it? The Watergate. So you live in the Watergate? You got a receptionist job at the Pentagon, and you live in the Watergate where it's $1 million a bedroom? She said, yeah, I live there. I said, well, that's on my way home. I can give you a ride home. So I drove Monica Lewinsky all the way home, as it were, and took her in my Mazda B2000 pickup truck to the under the Kennedy Center and up into the parking lot. You do a little loop around, and I pulled her in front of the entrance to the Watergate. Her next door neighbor was Bob and Libby Dole. Did you know that? Bob and Libby Dole. And Bob Dole, Senator Bob Dole. I know it, you know it, the American people know it. And so I dropped her off, and she thought I was so generous that she pulled out her purse, which was like a vaudeville trunk. It was something you could travel through Europe for weeks with this purse. Just roll your clothes, stick it in this giant purse. And she dug down and went past her elbow to reach down to the bottom of the purse. And I'm like, what? I said, what? I don't want it. Whatever it is, I don't want it. And she comes up with a cardboard box. White Houses do this sort of thing, of M&Ms. It's a White House white box with gold trim, and it has the presidential seal, the seal of the president on it. I said, oh, well, I'll take that. That's kind of fun. So I took it, and hey, shake it, and it's M&Ms. And she got out of the car. And about 2 weeks later, she became famous. But I took it home, and my best girl in the world was sitting there. And I said, hey, look what I got coming home from work at 7:15 or whatever it was. And I tossed her the box across the room. She immediately tore it open and started eating the M&Ms. M&Ms, I said. Little did I know at that time that 2 weeks later, the story would break on the Drudge Report about Monica Lewinsky. And I said, wow, I kind of blew this one, or did I muff it? What did I do? I did something. And I should have kept those M&Ms, because that would have been great to have the Monica Lewinsky. I should have had her sign them and maybe give a little kiss with lipstick or something. It would have been great eBay item, because you know the slogan of M&Ms, right? They melt in your mouth, not in your hand. See, so it's bada boom. It's hey, we got a rim shot out of that one. That's not so. That's my Monica Lewinsky story. I have more Monica Lewinsky stories, but that's my central Monica Lewinsky. My central Monica Lewinsky story. There are, of course, as you might expect, dozens and dozens of big news stories to get to today, having nothing to do, as far as I know, with Monica Lewinsky. We've got Donald Trump with his statements, his policy, his speech, his, some would say, evolutions on illegal immigration policy. The moderators, this is what we call the moderators for the big presidential debates, have been selected. And I've got to say, I don't know who we've got negotiating for us. I think the art of the deal didn't come through on this one, because some of the moderators that were chosen are not the moderators that I would have chosen for the debates. And we'll get into that one. But I want to hear from you this morning. across the country on Donald Trump and illegal immigration and whether you're good, bad, or indifferent to the iterations that we have been taking in. The debate moderators I'll get into, and another story that I think is kind of fascinating, Georgetown University saying that they're going to offer the descendants of slaves preferential admissions treatment. Georgetown, not all universities across America, but Georgetown University in Washington, about a mile and a half from where I live. And this is an interesting idea for a variety of reasons. And I want to get into that today because I have some, I think, maybe unexpected views on that and a variety of other things. Dwayne Wade, the Chicago Bulls player whose cousin was murdered in Chicago walking down the street with her baby in a baby stroller. Dwayne Wade was on television talking about this and had some kind of surprising things to say about Donald Trump. And I think there may be some things that he doesn't fully understand or appreciate, and I'll try to help him with a couple of those things. And a whole host, a veritable cornucopia of other stories across the Ferguson Police Department. This is going to come as a shock to everyone out there, I think. The Ferguson Police Department is having trouble hiring police officers. They're down, and they've got a little program of their own going, but they're trying to hire police officers to staff up in Ferguson, Missouri, and for some inexplicable reason, they're having a lot of trouble getting, hey, I want to be a police officer. I think I'm going to sign up in Ferguson, Missouri. When's the last time, police officers there had any trouble? It's probably not a problem at all for us. And Anthony Weiner has a job offer, and this is very important stuff. Anthony Weiner with a new job offer from a porn site, and it is sincere. It's honest. They're concerned about him. They care. That's what they care about him. And I want to get to those and everything else. Well, we've got phone lines open at the moment, 800-282-2882. That's 800-282-2882. I'm Chris Plant, sitting in for Rush Limbaugh today. Well, all right then. Yeah, Ferguson police having trouble recruiting people. It's almost impossible to believe. Who wouldn't want to be a Ferguson police officer? I think anywhere you go in the country, it comes with name ID, doesn't it? Ferguson Police Department. The Business Insider has a story. Ferguson police can't hire enough officers 2 years after Michael Brown's shooting death, the headline is. 2 years after Michael Brown's shooting death put a national spotlight on the Ferguson police, the suburban St. Louis city is struggling to maintain the number of officers it needs. Gosh, you should change the name. I thought they were going to change the name of the city. After the whole thing, I thought they were going to have to sort of wind it down, wrap it up, call it something else. Call it Michael Brownville. Call it, change it to something. The Brownsville, the department is facing 13 vacancies. It's a small department now, It's down to a staff of 36 officers compared to 55 in 2014. Kind of a small police department for one that's so reviled. I wonder where Officer Darren Wilson is. Does anybody know? He might be in Central Park, too. He might be living in Australia. What happened to him? His definitely witness protection program would be welcome, I think, from him. Some officers have retired. I bet some of them retired early, while others who spent months dealing with the protests and heavy scrutiny left for different jobs. Can't imagine why. And there were 2 police officers shot at the last. The news media doesn't like to talk about this, but 2 Ferguson police officers were actually shot by a gunman at one of the last protests they had there during that cycle. Mayor James Knowles III said day before yesterday, some just got fed up with police work. Yeah, that's probably it. They probably just got fed up with police work. I think you got your finger on the pulse, Mr. Mayor. I see now why you're an elected official. Finding qualified applicants has been tough, he said, adding that leaders in the Missouri city were pushing to make the force, which was mostly white at the time of Brown's fatal shooting, more diverse. By more diverse, they mean less white, I assume. Ferguson has sponsored 2 young black men at St. Louis County Police Academy, paying for their training. You got to pay for your police training. You sign up to be the police, and you got to pay for your police training. That doesn't seem right. Let's talk about that for a minute, because that seems a little kooky. You got to sign up and pay to become a police officer in Ferguson, Missouri. It's a form of masochism, I think. paying for their training in exchange for an agreement to work in the suburb upon graduating. One recently graduated. Hey, progress is being made. The other is currently in class. Good luck to Ferguson, Missouri. I think they've got some issues that they're going to have to deal with there for a long time to come, particularly when it comes to being a police officer. You see, I'm going to have to pull up this story also. Police officer, where was it? I think it was in New Mexico. A guy shot him. See this? And the bullet hit his badge. And the badge stopped the bullet. He's got to get a new badge. But I'm going to have to go find that story. I didn't print that one up. Anthony Weiner, perhaps you're familiar with him. He's married to the lovely and talented Humma Weiner. And I see a theme emerging here, I think. Anthony Weiner gets job offer from porn site is the headline. A porn website has extended a helping hand to hopeless horn dog Anthony Weiner. Smut site porn.com has taken pity on the disgraced politician after he lost his wife. Well, he didn't lose her. He knows where she is. She's with Hillary. I mean, it's as you look behind the refrigerator, I find a lot of stuff back there. I don't spread those rumors like Bill Clinton does about Hillary, but I know that I've read in numerous papers that Bill Clinton has told a number of his paramours, shall I use the euphemism paramours, has told a number of his paramours that Hillary Clinton has, I'll do it like a 1970s game show, has blanked more blank than he has. Say, I've read that in a number of instances. And Hillary Clinton aide Huma Abedin, a.k.a. Humma Weiner, and his job as a TV commentator after his latest sexting scandal broke. Anthony Weiner's most recent series of sextings have made it quite clear he suffers from sex addiction. As is often the case with addiction, his life has been turned upside down. His marriage has ended, and he has lost his job at New York One, said the vice president, Charles Anderson, of Porn.com on Thursday. Porn.com takes sex addiction very seriously, and we realize Mr. Weiner is in a very bad place. You know, if you were writing this for a bad comedy sketch, and his name was Mr. Weiner, and this was the story, and his wife's name is Humma, and it's why people make stuff up anymore, I just don't know. Porn.com takes sex addiction very seriously. We realize Mr. Weiner is a bad place, sympathizes Anderson. He must feel very alone, except for the nameless women he's been sending the now infamous crotch shots. Abedin announced on Monday she's separating from Weiner. You know, they just keep coming. After the last in a series of erotic selfies was made public by the New York Post. This is one where he's cradling his baby in one arm and all of that good stuff. But the site sees a silver lining. Anderson, with Porn.com, hopes to hire Weiner to write a monthly advice column for the site entitled Dear Mr. Weiner. This is a serious and sincere offer as we wish to appoint Anthony Weiner our first ever love and sex columnist at Porn.com. What a country. I guess this is all part of the fundamental transformation of America. Huh? This is, if you keep voting Democrat, I guess it could be entertaining. Filling in for Rush Limbaugh, isn't that crazy? That's just nuts, isn't it? People at CNN are rolling over in their media graves there in the ratings in the ratings graveyard. Who's doing what? This is nuts. Also, John Lewis, I don't know if anybody saw this, the Stephen Colbert. You know, remember Stephen Colbert? He had a show on Comedy Central. Now he's got one on CBS. I don't know if anybody watches that very much. Does that have any ratings? He's Stephen Colbert. I think he's on real late at night. It's called The Late Show. So it's John Lewis was there last night, and they had him. This is not a young man. This guy. John Lewis is an authentic hero of the civil rights movement when the civil rights movement was really the civil rights movement. Now, unfortunately, the Democrat Party has forced him, convinced him to do all kinds of ridiculous things in the last few years. Since our whole world and our political process is a TV show now, he went on the Stephen Colbert, The Late Show from the Ed Sullivan Theater in New York City. And they had this congressman, civil rights leader, 76 years old. They had him do a crowd surfing. And you imagine, what is he, Bon Jovi? He's crowd surfing in the crowd at the Late Show, and they push this 76-year-old man out there face down, no less. I mean, that's not comedy. That's elder abuse. Somebody should notify the authorities. This is not appropriate under any circumstances to take a 76-year-old man and push him face down into a crowd being passed across the top of the crowd. And he's face down. Whenever crowd surfing, you should always crowd surf face up, back down, because, well, there are perfectly good reasons for that. I'm thinking that Congressman Lewis is probably getting jostled and ways that he hasn't probably since the civil rights movement, I'm guessing. Long time. Going over the top of the crowd, 76 years old. Face up, face up. Everybody keep that in mind. And on television, we shouldn't be doing elder abuse as entertainment. I think that's wrong. I went to Catholic school for a little while, and I don't think that's appropriate at all. We should go to the telephones. Shouldn't we take a caller to the Rush Limbaugh program with me sitting in for Rush Limbaugh? That's nuts. Chris Plant, we're at 888-282-2882. Right. We're at 800-282-2882. Who put that phone number out there? Let's go to the telephones. Let's go to Donna in Frederick, Maryland. Donna, you're on the Rush Limbaugh Show with Chris Plant.
Hi, Chris. It is so great to be able to hear you on the golden EIB microphone today. I want to comment on immigration because you brought that up earlier.
Uh-huh.
And there's a lot of discussion about this, but I have to think in terms that Trump has surrounded himself with sensible people like Mr. Bannon, mm-hmm. and therefore he feels it is wise to position himself in a more, let's say, low-key stance than what he previously had mm-hmm. with regard to how to handle that. And I think it's important because he reaches a much wider audience.
So you approve of his, would you say he's dialed it back?
Yes.
Were you a supporter of Donald Trump's from the beginning?
Yes. As time has gone on, he's grown on me. When there
were 17 contestants in the beauty pageant, you had someone else that was in front of Donald Trump in line?
Yes, I did.
And it doesn't really matter at this point who that was, but you've moved over to Donald Trump. Before he became the nominee, did you move over to Donald Trump?
Yes, I was kind of moving that direction.
Okay. All right. And you approve then, as a voter, a taxpayer, an American citizen, of Donald Trump dialing down. But some of the rhetoric has changed. For example, we're not necessarily talking about a wall from the Pacific Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico anymore. We're talking about a security something or other. And some will be electronic, and we're talking about sensors to look underground for tunnels, and we're talking about some. It's not all wall, right? And that's okay?
Yes.
Okay.
They have to do what they have to do.
Well, that's right.
It's the topography is different everywhere.
That's exactly right. The topography is different, and it's true. And I've been talking about this on my show. And there's a lot of desert and sands shift, and out there they have things they call arroyos in the desert where water flows for a part of the year, and it's in a different place every year. And there's a mountain range that comes up the continent. Over there where Mexico joins the United States. And so there are some complications when it comes to building a wall from sea to shining Gulf. And then there's the other thing. So we got a deportation force. Now, they did something I think pretty clever here, and that is they took deportation force, which I think he mentioned only once. If we held Hillary Clinton to the same standard that Donald Trump is being held to, we'd have a different ball of wax altogether with the old Hillary there, Hillary Diane. But it went from being a deportation force to a deportation task force. Now, that's completely different. Now, Mike and Bo Snerdley and I could create a deportation task force, but I wouldn't call us a deportation force. And he said that deportation task force will reside within or under the umbrella of ICE. That's okay with you?
You know, Chris, this is such a hard call. Mm-hmm. But I think in this case, a little bit less equals a lot more.
Yeah, I've got to say,
that's what I'm trying to say.
I've got to say that when I heard this deportation force thing, it struck me as, and again, it was off the cuff. It was Donald Trump. It wasn't a policy paper. It wasn't hammered out in a conference room. It was something that he delivered, I think, to Mo and Mika on Morning Joke on MSKFC. And it was just off the cuff. And there's, we're going to hold you to that. No, we're going to hold you to that forever. Honestly, if Hillary Clinton were held to the same standard with all of her lies, if Barack Obama were held to the same standard, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor, you like your health care plan, keep your health care plan. If we held Democrats, let's just say, to the same standard that the phony news media is holding Donald Trump, we'd have a completely different political process. But he did say deportation force, and he's not a guy who spent his career in government. And I think most people, if you support Donald Trump or if you're going to vote for Donald Trump or if you're going to vote against Hillary Clinton, recognize or accept that there's a certain amount of wiggle room that's built in because he's not a career politician, a career government inside the beltway kind of guy who uses all the spit-polished terminology that the political weasels in Washington use with such alacrity. And it's kind of why we want to throw the weasels out, because they craft and shape phrases and use specific words. It depends on what the meaning of the word is, and so on, so that they can deceive us with panache, whereas Donald Trump just kind of lets it all go, and then later on there's some mop-up to do, and I think most people recognize that. Now, I never wanted, when it's deportation force, I thought, really? We're going to create a new government agency of some kind that's a new law enforcement, federal, nationwide, coast to coast? And it just struck me as being a bad idea, as in during the George W. Bush administration after September 11th, they created the Department of Homeland Security, which is this uber bureaucracy, which has no place in the United States of America. They wanted to blame the CIA and the NSA for not cracking the code in time. And so they created the Director of National Intelligence that would be over the director of the CIA, which is completely absurd because the Central Intelligence Agency, it's called Central for a reason, created in the National Security Act 1947, and it was to be the uber boss of all of the various intelligence agencies, and the military and the civilian agencies would all be under the umbrella of the Director of Central Intelligence, the CIA director. So we already had somebody with that position, and it was just kind of a classic bureaucratic knee-jerk response to create more bureaucracy in the aftermath of September 11th. And DHS shouldn't exist. It's the monster that will never die. Now, the Director of National Intelligence should be dissolved as an office, and it should go back to the Director of Central Intelligence, and I don't want to see a national deportation force created. We already have one. It's called ICE. Know what I mean?
You know, it's interesting because I was thinking that very same thing. If they'd pay attention that the laws, the laws that we already have, rather than ignoring them, Trump should just rebrand that same law that we had in place to begin with.
Well, and also, as a Republican, you deal with the bureaucracy you have. You don't talk about expanding and growing the bureaucracy and the government. We already have all the mechanisms in place. Barack Obama could be doing this if he wanted to. He just doesn't want to. I'm Chris Plant, sitting in for Rush Limbaugh. I should also know we're going to have Jeffrey Lord on, CNN political analyst, and and he's going to be on a little bit later this morning. And are we having Dinesh D'Souza? We're having Dinesh D'Souza. Well, let's tell you, Dinesh D'Souza. All right, we're going to have Dinesh D'Souza on, whose motion picture, Hillary's America, is actually returning to theaters, back in theaters this weekend, this Labor Day weekend. And if you haven't seen it, I went and saw it with my best girl, and you got to see it. Everybody's got to see it. And then when the DVD comes out, you got to buy the DVD too. No, I'm not an investor in the movie. You got to support these things when they so rarely come along and they don't have the usual left-wing message sort of thing. And let us go to the telephones once again. Let's go to Rob in Seven Lakes, North Carolina. Rob, you're on the Rush Limbaugh Show with Chris Plant.
Hey, Chris. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
In North Carolina, but spent most of my time with my wife in Vermont. So we know liberal politics, and now we kind of know independent conservative politics down here in North Carolina.
America. The patchwork. And so what do you think about Donald Trump and his various evolutions on illegal immigration?
Well, all politicians, Chris, as you know, have evolutions of thought, and you pointed it out quite well with Hillary and Obama. I mean, Hillary used to be for traditional marriage, big time.
Big time.
And now look.
President Obama, too. And something that's always fun to point out is that those terrible, awful Koch brothers that you hear so much about from Harry Reid and the likes of Harry Reid, the Koch brothers, who are actually libertarian and not right-wing conservatives, they started the Cato Institute, I think David Koch did, and all this stuff. The evil, sinister Koch brothers were both in favor of and spoke out about same-sex marriage, in favor of same-sex marriage, long before Barack Obama was in favor of it. And Hillary Clinton then followed Barack Obama. And that was just all about fundraising. It was because they were being threatened by groups that, we're going to stop raising money for you if you don't say that you're for same-sex marriage. So naturally, in the name of fundraising, being Democrats and utterly without principle, they went ahead with the fundraising thing. And that's why Barack Obama evolved on that one. But Donald Trump has changed some of his positions on illegal immigration, or at least some of the language, right?
Some of the language. And for me, Chris, it's really about, once Donald Trump becomes president, it's about the all-important judges, federal judges, appointees. They're going to be the final rulers on what happens with immigration. And if you get Hillary in there, you know how they're going to rule.
You're doomed. And that's, honestly, if you didn't like Donald Trump, I had a caller last week, 2 weeks ago, who's a Donald Trump supporter, looking forward to voting for Donald Trump, said that Donald Trump was never number 17 on his list of the Republican candidates. He was for Jim Gilmore before he was for Donald Trump. But Donald Trump is the nominee now, and he's with Donald Trump. And in large part, it is because of the judicial appointees. Catherine Herridge on Fox News did an outstanding piece the other day on all of the appointments that Barack Obama has made to the various federal courts around the country, the circuit courts and the district courts, and the influence that they've had. And he's really stacked a lot of the courts over the course of the last 8 years, which is what you do when you're president, on either side of the fence. But he's been very effective at moving the courts very much to the left. And that's something that will plague us for generations to come. We've got to replace Antonin Scalia. And that's going to be one of the first tasks of our next president, whoever that is. And if it's Donald Trump, we're going to get one kind of a Supreme Court justice. And if it's Hillary Clinton, we're going to get, maybe Raul Castro might be too old, but they probably have children, the Castro brothers, or grandchildren or great-grandchildren that Hillary would like to put on the court. And that's enormous. I personally, Antonin Scalia, who's one of the greats. I actually had an opportunity to meet Antonin Scalia, Justice Scalia, and his wonderful wife, and have dinner with them at a friend's house a couple of months before Justice Scalia died. And he was just great, hilarious, funny, everybody laughing, telling jokes, singing at the dinner table. He sang To My Best Girl, his old camp song he sang. And he died a couple of months later, and it was a terrible thing. And it tips the balance of the court. It's amazing how easy it is to tip the Supreme Court one way or the other. And I would like to see Ted Cruz be selected, or at least considered, to replace Antonin Scalia on the Supreme Court. I think he'd be a reliable, consistent conservative. It's kind of good for him. He doesn't have to make any friends. Nobody has to like him. He doesn't go on television. He doesn't even have to go to the State of the Union address. And in the Senate, he'd get 99 votes. I don't know if he can vote for himself, but in the Senate, he'd get 99 votes. It's kind of reminds me of the old the billboard in Arkansas when Bill Clinton was running for president, and a farmer put up a billboard, said, "Elect Bill Clinton president. Just get him the hell out of Arkansas." And it's sort of like that. But Ted Cruz would be a good, reliable conservative on the court, and it would be a good place for him for a whole variety of reasons. And coming from Texas, Republican governor, Republican replacement, good stuff, and nice offices. He could look out at the Capitol across the street. It'd be wonderful for everybody all around, I think. Rob, thank you, my friend. I'm Chris Plant. I'm sitting in today for Rush Limbaugh, who's taking a few well-deserved days off after some urging by his friends. Take a few days off, why don't you? So some other people can get some time. And enjoy yourself. Go relax. Have a pina colada. Well, not a pina colada, but have something good. Be right back. All right, we are back. This is Chris Plant sitting in for Rush Limbaugh. taking a couple of days off and back Tuesday. Yes, back Tuesday. Rush Limbaugh is back on Tuesday. Monday is Labor Day, of course. It's a holiday, a great American holiday. And there's a great deal yet to get to this morning. All kinds of things. Slavery and Georgetown University. Crazy people in Seattle leaving their cars on nothing. Oh, and Dwayne Wade in Chicago. Apparently he's not a Trump fan, but he's glad somebody drew attention to the fact that his cousin was shot in Chicago because the Democrats certainly wouldn't, since it's something that hangs around their neck. We are going to have Dinesh D'Souza on a little bit later on. His movie Hillary's America, back in theaters this weekend. It is a big winner. It's a must-see for Americans. Bring the Nick Searcy coming on to also join us. This great movie about Brandon Burlsworth, which I'm sure you've heard about. You heard Rush Limbaugh talking about it, and we're going to get into that a little bit later on as well. Also, the debate moderators have been chosen, and I'll just give you a clue, Manderson Pooper, and then we'll just move on from there, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. And also in the next hour coming up, we're going to have Jeffrey Lord with us. He is a CNN analyst, my alma mater. I can't wait to hear what he has to say about CNN. Chris, they're still paying him, aren't they? So I'll try to be nice. And also a surrogate, effectively, for the Trump campaign, Jeffrey Lord, coming up in the next hour. With lots and lots more stuff to get to. In the next 2 hours, I'm Chris Plant, sitting in for Rush Limbaugh. We'll be right back. Oh, don't forget about the ISIS people in Syria banning the FIFA regulations. These guys are really harsh. It's the heart of the nation's capital. Not really entirely sure the nation's capital has a heart. It has some other body parts, some of which are inflicted upon us fairly regularly. But heart may not be at the top of the list. I am Chris Plant. I do my radio show ordinarily Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to noon, out of WMAL in Washington, D.C. I've lived in Washington for far too long now, I think. I've lived there for longer than I've lived everybody else, but I am originally from the United States of America and raised primarily on the North Shore of sunny Chicago, along the shores of Lake Michigan. A little bit of New York when I was a small child, and a little bit of Milwaukee when I was a small child. And I lived in California for 7 years. I lived in Kansas City for 6 months. And then somehow, the Cadillac got stuck in the ditch in Washington, D.C., and here I am all these years later. But having a good time, and as was mentioned in the generous lead-in there, a veteran journalist. I was with CNN, of all places, for 17 years, where I had a grand old time, and I'll try to clean it up. Was able to go on the All the World's Hellholes tour for a bunch of years as a first producer and then correspondent covering military matters and intelligence matters for CNN. And having a grand old time getting to do all kinds of great boy stuff. You cover the Pentagon for a news organization, and you get to do all kinds of great stuff. You get to fly fighter jets, and I drove the USS Enterprise, the aircraft carrier, and spent several days on a nuclear attack submarine and Los Angeles class attacks, which I also drove. I've driven a lot of. I don't have a license to drive a submarine or an F-16, but I got to fly an F-16, F-18, A-6 Intruder off the deck of the Enterprise 3 times. Good boy stuff. Fall out of airplanes with the Army, with the Golden Knights a couple of times, and good fun. Good fun stuff. And you do some news in the meantime, and that's back when CNN wasn't quite the way it is now. We have Jeffrey Lord joining us this hour, and there's one story I just want to sort of slip in here. The Columbus Dispatch. Green Party presidential candidate, Jill Stein. Everybody knows Jill Stein. She's got 2% of the vote. Did you see the poll a couple of weeks ago? They did the poll, and they included Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate, who got 2% of the vote, and Gary Johnson, who got 7% of the voters. And then they swapped out Gary Johnson and Jill Stein with others, and they swapped out Jill Stein with Harambe, the dead gorilla. Remember Harambe, the dead gorilla from The Enclosure? And Harambe, the dead gorilla, also got 2 percentage points. Got the same as that. Had to hurt a little bit, didn't it? I'm thinking Harambe's dead, and when he was living, he was a gorilla, and you'd vote for him as much as you'd vote for me? Yes, Jill, that's exactly the case. And here's one reason why. The Columbus Dispatch. Green Party presidential candidate's Capital University speech delayed after she flies to wrong city. Oh, that can't be good. See, if you have Air Force One, if you're they always fly to the right city. Air Force One rarely lands in the wrong city. Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein was scheduled to speak at Capital University in Bexley at noon, but it looks like she's running a little late. That's because instead of flying to Columbus, she accidentally flew to Cincinnati instead, according to the Capital University Greens student organization who are sponsoring the event. Yes, you heard that correctly. And listen to this. About 100 people were waiting at Schaff Lawn on campus. It's unclear if they'll all hang around, all 100 of them. It's unclear if they will all hang around. There are 100 people waiting in line for a hot dog down on the corner here at the intersection. She's drumming up those big crowds. It's unclear if they're all going to wait around while Stein drives up from Cincinnati, but pizzas are being ordered to thank the people for their patience. I hope they're green pizzas. No meat. There got to be vegan pizzas, right? Got to have vegan. It's all meat-free and all that good stuff. It's also unclear how and why she flew to the wrong airport. Aaron Suarez, who's president of the Capital University Greens student organization and a sophomore political science major from Marion, said, "They just got on the road and they will be 2 hours late. Things happen." I assume they cropped off man, where he said man. And then he took a hit from his vape and went back. Where's the pizza? He's a green guy. All right, and with that, let's go to Jeffrey Lord, who is, I hope, hanging on the line. And Jeffrey Lord, a remarkable career, going all kinds of places, working in the administration of President Ronald Reagan. Thank you very much. The greatest president of my lifetime, certainly. And a journalist, an author, now an analyst for CNN, the cable news network, my alma mater. And Jeffrey Lord, thanks for being with us.
Hello, Chris. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So tell me, we've been talking about Donald Trump and the immigration, the illegal immigration evolutions. Would you say that there have been evolutions?
I just don't agree with it. I mean, I think we're all the media fascination with this gets off the topic here. I mean, he gave his speech the other day, and he was pretty clear about what he'd do, which sounds to me about what he always said he would do. And I just think that we get into semantics here. I think I have a column at the American Spectator today, as a matter of fact, comparing his trip to Mexico to Reagan's dealings with the Cold War. And if you'll recall, Chris, and I know you do, that when Ronald Reagan took over, he was viewed as an extremist by even people like Gerald Ford. Mm-hmm. And at his very first press conference, which was 9 days after he was inaugurated, and Sam Donaldson stood up and asked him about his policies towards the Soviet Union, and he said to gasps in the room that they reserve unto themselves the right to lie and to cheat, and that we have to be aware of this when we deal with them. And, there was a gasp in the room, and that sort of set the tone. But in fact, it was that kind of reality that ended the Cold War, won the Cold War, et cetera. He took the status quo and, got rid of it.
And, of course, his strategy...
I think that's exactly what Donald Trump is about here, is that we have been lulled into the status quo here with people streaming across this border, causing all kinds of chaos. Yes, in fact, there are crimes committed. I mean, I hear this constant refrain from people, oh, well, there's more Americans, natural-born Americans who commit crimes. I mean, the point is there should be zero crime rate from illegal immigrants because they shouldn't be here.
Yeah, well, I would hope that indigenous Americans commit more crimes. It'd be pretty extraordinary if the 10, 11, whatever the number, 15 million people committed more crimes than the rest of the population in a nation of 320 million people.
This kind of thing a little crazy, but it's very clear that when he says that the immigration system is a mess and that it's in even worse shape than we thought, that he's correct. And at first all this focus was on illegal immigration, which, by the way, as I repeatedly point out on CNN, America is the only country in the world in which 100% of the population is descended from immigrants. So he's hardly, including Donald Trump, he's hardly anti-immigrant, but illegal immigration is a whole other topic. And when we realized with what went on in California with the shootings by the Muslim couple and the woman who came into the country on a, what do they call it, a K-1 visa, fiancé visa or whatever, and they didn't even check her out to see what was going on here.
Hey, what could go wrong?
She arrives in San Bernardino.
Right, sure.
And they had no idea. So you realize that the actual regular immigration process is a mess. And that's before you even get to the illegal immigration situation.
Right. So
you really almost have electric shock therapy here for a lot of elites in this country because it is so bad, and they just sort of sit back and accept it as the status quo. Meanwhile, regular folks out there have had enough.
Well, and as I'm fond of pointing out, they would never be accepting of this level of illegal immigration and open borders if we were talking about France, if we were talking about Canada, if we were even talking about Mexico. They would defend Mexico's right to protect their southern border from people coming in.
Can you imagine, Chris, if 11 million Americans illegally streamed across the Mexican border to settle in?
Right.
I mean, the furor would be unbelievable.
Well, this is another thing that amuses me, that liberals, whenever we have, every 4 years now at this point, people like Barbara Streisand and those of her ilk threaten to move to Canada every time. Have you ever noticed the fact that not a one of them has ever threatened to move to Mexico?
Yeah. Very good point.
You know, why is that? I guess it's a simple case of racism. They don't like brown people. They like Canadians and Eskimos. And
I mean, it is. I mean, that gets off into the whole subject, which I have been saying for years, that the Democratic Party is the party of race, that they began this way with making an alliance in 1800 with Thomas Jefferson and slave owners, and it has continued all the way through the segregation years and lynching and the founding of the Ku Klux Klan, which was their military arm, their terrorist arm,
you bet.
All the way through to today when it's illegal immigration by skin color. I mean, that's in essence what's really going on here, and everything is about race. They are obsessed with it.
Yeah, I always ask them if Jefferson Davis was their favorite Democrat president, see if they
exactly
pick up on
somebody pointed out the other day that in 2008, when Hillary ran for president, there were a group of people from Arkansas calling themselves the Arkansas Travelers who would go around America campaigning for Hillary, and they arrived in South Carolina, and their button, which I've seen from 2008, that says Arkansas Travelers for Hillary, the background of it is the Confederate battle flag that is so controversial in South Carolina.
Right. Well, that's, all vestiges of the Democrat Party are being eliminated on college campuses and elsewhere with the tearing down of statues to Confederate generals. Democrat Nathan Bedford Forrest, this was one you mentioned, the founding of the KKK. He was an elected Democrat, Nathan Bedford Forrest, statewide, and also the KKK was created to terrorize freed blacks and the Republicans that freed them, and they lynched a lot of white Republicans, the KKK did, for their terrible deeds like the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, so which
That's
Democrats
exactly right.
opposed.
People say to me, they passed the Democrats were responsible for the civil rights laws in the 1960s, and I keep saying to them, why did we have to have those laws? And the answer is that all that legislation was passed in the 1860s and 1870s, and the Democrats spent 100 years trying to overturn it, get around it, or put a halt to it. I said, so it had to be redone in 1964. But so please don't. I mean, this is like the fireman who turns out to be the arsonist.
Right.
And arrives on scene to put out the fire and wants the credit.
That's exactly right. And also it was the Republicans on Capitol Hill that led the charge. LBJ gets all the credit for it, and we all know what LBJ said.
Everett Dirksen.
And Everett Dirksen was the Republican on Capitol Hill from Illinois, the senator leading the charge for civil rights and voting rights, and the Democrats were the ones opposing. Now, they play this little two-step, this sleight of hand that they pretend gives them the get-out-of-jail-free card, where they say the magic words Southern strategy, and then they high-five each other and walk away like that means something, and it's just another fabrication, honestly, of the Democrat Party to airbrush their own history.
That's right.
And it's an absolute...
And my point is that they haven't walked away from this history. I mean, that whether they were playing to all those Southern whites in the 19th century and most of the 20th century, or whether they're playing to African Americans or Latinos, they make these pitches based on race. That's what it is. It's not about jobs and the economy and colorblind arguments.
Everything is
all about race.
That's
what
exactly
they are about.
Which is
to do it.
Fundamentally anti-American. We're talking to Jeffrey Lord. We're going to take a quick break right here. Can you stay with us for a couple of minutes, Jeffrey? All right. Well, we're going to take a quick one and be right back with more from Jeffrey Lord. We have returned. As Douglas MacArthur once said. He said I, though. He didn't say we. He said I. Philippines. And today, by the way, is the 71st anniversary of the surrender of the Japanese at the end of World War II on the deck of the USS Missouri, the fantail of the USS Missouri. Kind of an important event in American history. Good stuff. My father, who art in heaven, was a Navy fighter pilot in WWII, the big one, and all that good stuff. But that's not important now because we have Jeffrey Lord on the line, don't we? And Jeffrey, I don't know if you saw this, and I want to ask you about CNN also and how much fun it is there. But you may have seen this, a Politico article today. Clinton advisors tell her to prep for a landslide. They says displaying unchecked confidence. The Democrats' paid consultants see plenty of paths to the White House.
Maybe they're eating some of those Colorado brownies. But I'm looking at polls that have Donald Trump cutting her lead in half. The Real Clear Politics and Average and polls here in Pennsylvania that have her in very much in a race within the margin of error in state after state after state. I mean, I think these people are smoking something because this bears no reaction, no comparison to it's not reality. When you talked about Jill Stein having a rally there in Columbus, and there were 100 people.
Yeah.
The other week, Hillary Clinton was here meaning Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and the press accounts had her having a crowd of, and I'm quoting directly, hundreds.
Yeah.
I was at the Donald Trump rally, both of them here in the area, and one that was a few days after that Hillary Clinton rally. I can only tell you, it filled the largest high school in the area. They had about 4,000 to 5,000 people inside, and there were another 5,000 people outside who wanted to get in and couldn't get in. This is what I call the enthusiasm gap. I mean, I just think this is so evident everywhere Trump goes. These crowds are mammoth.
That's true.
Time he was here before that, he filled what we call the Farm Show Arena, which holds about 10,000 people, again, with thousands outside trying to get in.
Hillary also spoke to the American Legion the other day, and the rest of the news media didn't show it, but Fox News had a camera in the back of the room and shot a wide shot. And even in the front 3-4 rows, there were lots and lots of empty seats. And a smattering of applause, and I assume they put some friendlies in there because they're good at staging things like that. She's not drawing people. She has no charisma. She's not likable. She's not a good retail politician.
When you think of how close this is in these polls, and has been pointed out, Trump hasn't really launched until now an advertising campaign. I mean, this is all coming about because she really is a weak candidate.
She's a terrible candidate. But at the same time, I did see something this morning that disturbed me a little bit, and that is that in Florida, you may have seen this story, the Hillary people have 51 offices up and operating in the state of Florida. The Trump organization has one office in the state of Florida, which, as you know, is a key, I think we remember 2000, a key state for any president if you're going to win the presidency, and he doesn't have a lot of, they call it the ground operation, he doesn't have a lot of offices scattered in key states around the country. Are we just relying on enthusiasm and people showing up at rallies?
No, I don't think so. I know Kellyanne Conway a bit from over the years. I think she's terrific. I think she really knows exactly what she's doing. I know the person who is in charge of the campaign in Pennsylvania, and he too has a serious track record of winning state elections for candidates for the U.S. Senate and other things. So I have complete and total confidence in this. And I would remind that the same kind of thing was said about Jeb Bush. He had $100 million plus in the bank, and had all these ads and all this big organization, and he was just going to roll over everybody. And he wound up winning no primaries and getting 3 delegates.
Right. Yeah, that's right. I know what it was, 150. It was $50 million per delegate, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeffrey Lord,
I mean, in some ways, I think she is, the Democrats' Jeb Bush.
Yeah, I had wanted to ask you about CNN, but we've run out of time. I appreciate you being here, and good luck on CNN between now and election day.
I'm having a great time.
Well, that's good. I know it's a little bit of a tough environment, having come from there myself. But listen, I appreciate your being here, and
Chris, anytime.
Looking for you on the television.
Thanks a lot.
Jeffrey Lord, thanks. We're going to take a quick break here. I'm Chris Plant, sitting in for Rush Limbaugh. All right, who's been to North Korea? Raise your hand. No. Have you been there? No. I know people that have been to North Korea. I know a number of people, a bunch of people actually, that have been to North Korea for a variety of reasons, mostly news people and government people, but on various missions. There's a story out last night, and this is really one for the books. These guys, the Hermit Empire, the Hermit Kingdom, the place is just nutty as. The headline is Long Missing U.S. Student Reportedly Kidnapped in China in 2004, Forced to Tutor North Korean Dictator. What's this? David Snedden. David Snedden, is he related to you, Mr. Snerdley? No, I don't think so. David Snedden, then a 24-year-old Brigham Young University student, disappeared in August of 2004 while hiking in China's Yunnan province. When Chinese police and the U.S. Embassy could not find him, China sends Snedden likely fell to his death in Tiger Leaping Gorge, a theory that his parents did not believe plausible. So Chinese police work, it was a closed case. They closed the case. He probably jumped into the gorge and sacrificed himself to the god of fire, something like that. Snedden's family claims on a website devoted to the search for him that they believe Snedden was kidnapped by North Korea and is being held hostage there. The claim appears to have stemmed from information gathered over the years and recent comments from Choi Sung-yong, head of South Korea's Abductees Family Union. See, they kidnapped so many South Koreans that they have a union, and so they unionized. Goes on a lot, apparently. On Wednesday, a Japanese news source reported that Snedden was abducted by agents of the North Korean government and whisked away some 2,500 miles from the Chinese province where he vanished. Yahoo News Japan also reported that Snedden became an English tutor to Kim Jong-un, the dictatorial leader of North Korea, and is now believed to have a wife and 2 children. All right, got a wife and kids in Pyongyang. Mac went out for a walk, and I never came back. Man, kidnapping with benefits. That's right. It comes with all kinds of goodies, because North Korea is such a nice place to live. The news outlet, which cited South Korean Abductees Family Union for the information, said Snedden lives in Pyongyang, where he teaches English. Snedden's parents say they believe the son was taken by the North Korean regime for training purposes. This is the Manchurian Candidate, English language version. I'm not sure what... because of his fluency in Korean, according to the Deseret News. Snedden, who grew up in Nebraska, served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints in South Korea. That's the Mormons. And the newspaper reported his mother, Kathleen Snedden, told the paper, "Reporter's son being in North Korea doesn't surprise me at all," she said. "We just knew in our heart that he was alive, so we had to keep fighting." This is... Man, oh man, I don't know. It's North Korea. You can probably... How many wives can you have in North Korea? And there's another one. You saw that he had a minister executed the other day by firing squad. A senior government official executed by firing squad, apparently because in a meeting he started to slouch. He was slouching. His posture was not what it should be. So they dragged him out of the place and they killed him by way of firing squad, which is not as bad as what he did. What was his uncle that he fed to the dogs? Remember that I had all the high command people come and watch so they could see what happens to people that are disloyal to Lil Kim. It does go on your permanent record, and everybody knows it, and it's this is rather an unusual place, I'm happy to say, but when you give radical, hardcore, left-wing dictatorships free rein, this is kind of what you get. Kim Jong-un executes education minister for not sitting properly. Boy, I mean, again, I mentioned earlier, I went to Catholic school, and the nuns, they could be pretty tough. Mr. McAvoy, too, he had a fraternity paddle and stuff, and you took him seriously, but North Korea is another level altogether. Kim Jong-un executes education minister by firing squad for not sitting properly during a meeting. What, you skip right over the rap on the knuckles with a ruler and go right to the firing squad. Kim Jong-un has executed a senior North Korean official by firing squad because he did not sit properly during a meeting. Education Minister Kim Yong-jin, they apparently don't have a lot of different names to choose from, I'm thinking, 63 years old, was shot dead after his bad sitting posture in Parliament incurred the wrath of the North Korean dictator. The slouching vice premier was interrogated and found to be an anti-revolutionary agitator. That's what we're all going to be found to be if Hillary gets elected, too. Before his execution in July, a South Korean official said. Well, why would that be a problem? And then that's just he's harsh but fair, a little strict. You know, it's kind of strict. I wonder if he went to Catholic school. It might be the birthplace of all of this stuff. I should go to a telephone call. Should I go to a telephone? Let's go to a telephone call. Let's do that. Let's go to Dave in Laurel, Maryland.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Dave.
You talk about table manners, huh?
Yeah, seriously.
If we had that rule, we could have gotten rid of Harry Reid a long time ago.
Yeah, for slouching?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like a question mark. He's question mark in the Mysterians. He's got some kind of spinal thing going on there. He should have it looked into. I know a good surgeon if he needs one.
In these debates, they're going to ask Trump some gotcha questions. They're going to ask him about, I don't know, his bankruptcies, his former marriages. They're going to ask him things like, you called Rosie O'Donnell a fat pig. Do you still feel that way? And I think his answer to every one of these gotcha questions should be exactly the same. And I think this is what it should be. He should say, at this point, what difference does it make? Now, once the laughing and the clapping stops, I think he should look at the camera and say, if that answer was an acceptable answer by a Secretary of State being questioned by a congressional committee looking into the deaths of 4 Americans, then it certainly is an acceptable answer for a presidential debate.
You know,
and you should say that every single time they ask him a gotcha question.
That is good. That would be a very good response. I don't know if you can do it with every question, but he should definitely expect, and you're absolutely right, that they announced, I mentioned earlier, debate moderators unveiled. Unveiled is the headline from The Hill. It's, what is it, the new Corvette? They weren't unveiled. They just announced these reporter guys. One of them is Chris Wallace of Fox News, and he's serious, and that's acceptable. Apparently, Donald Trump kind of gave a nod during an interview to Lester Holt. So Lester Holt from NBC News, who is generally innocuous enough, but the problem is that he's the front man for NBC News, and NBC News is one of the most corrupt news organizations on the planet. Then you have Manderson Pooper of CNN, and he's a billionaire, member of the Vanderbilt family. He vacations at Biltmore House. He bought a fire station in New York as a plaything. Did you know that? Yes, he did. He bought a fire station in New York as a playhouse, go up and down the pole and all that stuff. Yeah, for parties. And Martha Raddatz of ABC. Yeah, seriously, bought a firehouse. Yeah, give it the old Google. Yeah, well, for parties and things, it's a nice place. He's a very wealthy man. He's from one of the wealthiest families in the history of humankind. His mother was Gloria Vanderbilt, and it wasn't just the blue jeans, and his father was no slouch either. So, no, Anderson Cooper is from one of the world's wealthiest families. He doesn't have to work or anything. He just kind of does this, but. And honestly, I used to work with him at CNN here and there, and he was one of the more intelligent, articulate, serious people there. But this machine just turns everything into what it is at CNN. And it's, he's voting for Hillary. Lester Holt is voting for Hillary. Martha Raddatz of ABC News, who does some good reporting on national security stuff. And I know her, and you know what? I like her. But they're all Democrats. The deck is stacked. Every direction you look, the deck is stacked. I can tell you from personal experience, decades long, learning it the hard way in the streets and in the hallways. And it's just the deck is so stacked against every Republican. Mitt Romney is one of the sweetest, nicest people you're ever going to meet in your life, and he wasn't the perfect candidate, and he wasn't aggressive enough. But look what they did to him. I mean, look what the news media does to Republican candidates. And then Hillary Clinton, who's one of the great slime balls ever to run for president of the United States, and is as untrustworthy as Kim Jong-un. is she just gets a free ride on everything, a free pay. And once again, I think a lot of American people are having their eyes opened this election cycle as to just how corrupt the media machine, and it's not just the news media either. It's Stephen Colbert, it's Jon Stewart, the list goes on, and it was David Letterman when David Letterman was on the air. These are all arrows in the Democrat Party's quiver. The jokes are obviously anti-Republican and pro-Democrat. The guests, the treatment of the guests. When Michelle Bachmann went on, Jimmy Fallon with The Roots, the song that they played. Remember the song they played when she came? The song was Lion Ass Bitch is the name of, can I say that? That's the name of the song that they played, that the Roots played when Michelle Bachmann came out. There were no lyrics when they played. It was the instrumental only. And it's too bad they wasted it because they could have Hillary on soon. And now what are they going to play? I guess they could play the Elton John version. The bitch is back. Maybe you have to save that for the second time she's on. Shouldn't that be the theme song of the Hillary Clinton campaign when she comes out on stage? They had Bill Clinton and Al Gore with their shirts off doing Fleetwood Mac and Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow. I think maybe Elton John should be the choice for the Clinton campaign, but that's me. I think I'm looking at the clock now. I've got to take a break, and Mike is nodding at me. So let's do that, and then we'll come back and do more fun radio. See, I went to the Bing Google machine on Al Gore's amazing internet there, peace be upon him, to look up Anderson Cooper's firehouse here. And again, it's not that he's a bad person. It's just he's a biased journalist. That's doesn't say, well, they're all either bad people or they're just bad journalists. But it's the state of the industry, and it is an industry, and it's a TV show. But here's a great headline from the Daily Mail on Anderson Cooper's Firehouse 2014. The headline is, Andy Cohen slides down Anderson Cooper's fireman's pole in CNN anchor's house at book party with guests Monica Lewinsky, Kelly Ripa, and Nene Leakes. Now, wait a minute. You got Andy Cohen sliding down Anderson Cooper's fireman's pole in his firehouse. You got Monica Lewinsky, and the fire people are sliding down poles. I don't know what Kelly Ripa's doing there. And then Nene Leakes. Nene Leakes. It's a Real Housewives person. It's some kind of a Real House. I'm glad I didn't know who Nene Leakes was. I did have, Nene Leakes. When I was a small child, my great-grandmother was called Nene. We called our great-grandmother Nene Leakes. She lived to be 98 years old, and during the end, she leaked a little, too. She was kind of in the, No, Nene, N-E-N-E, Nene Leakes. And that was, I'm not kidding, that was the name of my great-grandmother, or at least that's what we called her. She lived to be 98 years old, I believe, and she saw some stuff, it's like that. Nene Leakes, that's what was going on with that. Where's the clock? Let's see. Shall we go to a telephone call? Let's go to a telephone call. Why don't we do that? Talk to some nice people. Let's go to Dalton in Gaithersburg, Maryland. I loved you in Roadhouse.
Yeah, I was actually named after Roadhouse. I was named after Patrick Swayze.
Were you really? You were named for Roadhouse, baby. I'm high-fiving.
Yeah, my dad, it was right after the movie was out, and my dad named me after him. He loved the name. He was a bouncer at the time, actually, so it was ironic.
Sure, Patrick Swayze, he's a bouncer in a bar. Ben Gazzara, he owned the town. He zigzags down the road. It's a fun movie. It's a camp kind of. It still is. I mean, it's a little over the top, but it's a fun movie. In any case, Dalton.
In any case, so I called because last week I heard something Rush said. He was talking about the woman that actually put out a report. She went across the rural cities, Pennsylvania, and put out the report of all the Trump signs and talking about. That those people aren't the ones getting polled, and that they might, show up in the, in the general election, and they're the ones that are going to shoot Trump over the top. And I'm one of those people. I'm 22 years old. I have 2 degrees, a bachelor's of art in economics, bachelor's of science in business. And I don't get on Twitter. I don't, I'm not really on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn some. But working 70 hours a week supporting my son. And, I'm in the world cities. I live in Hagerstown, Maryland. I went to Trump rally. I think a couple calls before you talked about, the Trump rallies and man, it was packed. It was in the airport over here and it's probably 5,000 or 10,000 people there. And there was 5,000 or 10,000 people waiting outside to get in. But we're the people that are going to show up, that they're not showing on the polls, the people that, aren't on Twitter, that they're not, polling it and not, seeing that those numbers out, because, I believe that those people are going to show up. And, I just kind of touched on something you were talking about before with the media and the bias. And, of course, when I was growing up, and even at the beginning of my freshman and sophomore year in college, I was more Democratic leaning. I was, I felt that my values were in line with them. And then, I started taking some economics courses and started taking some business courses, and really got, understanding of what's going on. And then switched over, started listening to WMALU and Rush and Savage, and then trying to change my whole perspective on things.
How about that? It's amazing what additional information will do. When you're only given one side of the story, I always kind of compare it to a trial in a courtroom, where the news media provides you with one side of the story, depending on what the story is, either with the case that the prosecution wants to make, as is the case with Donald Trump, for example, or the case that the defense makes, as is the case with Hillary Clinton. But they only give you half of the story. The so-called mainstream news media, the Lester Holtz and Anderson Coopers and so on, give you a half of the story. And I've always said, if you listen to my show, Dalton, that the most insidious power that the news media has is the power to ignore. And if they ignore key facts, key elements of a story, then the listener, the viewer, the reader comes away with a misimpression or a corrupt impression of what they should be understanding, but don't, because you've only heard from the prosecution or you've only heard from the defense. And I find that all too many people these days are perfectly content to just take half of the story and run with this and spout off talking points that have been issued to them. And I find Democrats and liberals tend to use the talking points that are issued by the party in a disturbingly consistent way. They use the actual words, phrases, and thoughts and so on that are issued to them by the party. And I find that to be I find that to be creepy. Dalton, thank you very much, my friend. We've got to take, what does Rush call them? An obscene profits break and an obscene profits break. And then we'll be right back. We don't know where Rush Limbaugh is, or as the Reverend Al Charlatan likes to call him on occasion, Russ Lumbar, because it's not on purpose. He's just the Reverend Al Charlatan. Ever since he lost the 320 pounds, his speech thing doesn't work quite the same. So we were just having a discussion here, Mr. Bo Snerdley and myself, and we want to take a moment, just a quick moment, to congratulate and give a hoo-ah to Jason Lewis in Minnesota, who just won his Republican primary for the 2nd District congressional seat in Minnesota. Jason Lewis, who at one time did sit in for Rush Limbaugh, right here on the Excellence in Broadcasting Network. And he left the glories of talk radio for politics, and things are going well because he just won his Republican primary in the 2nd District in Minnesota. So, hoo-ah, Jason Lewis from everybody here. I also got a nice award from the good people at Accuracy in Media, the Reed Irvine organization, which is nice. I have them side by side, actually, the Edward R. Murrow and the Accuracy in Media award, which I got much later. No, I wasn't saying it should be part of my resume or anything like that here. But here's a great headline that has them all confused from Fusion. Trump's immigration plan could deport more Europeans and Canadians than Mexicans. Well, now, see, they misunderstand everything, don't they, in the news media. Donald Trump's aggressive new plan. Is it aggressive to enforce existing laws and secure our border? I guess that's, and new, it's new, I guess, because the Democrats don't want to have a border at all. Plan to create a deportation task force. So it'll create a that you know how many task forces Barack Obama has created in the last 8 years that nobody ever heard from again? Perhaps inadvertently could end up targeting more undocumented immigrants from Europe and Canada than the Mexicans he's been trashing so hard during his campaign. Well, listen, if you're in the country illegally, leave. Please. Here's the first. It's a nice request. I think, we have laws. We have immigration laws. If you have a visa and you've overstayed your visa, it's just as I would respect the laws of Canada and the laws of Mexico. And I've been to Canada and Mexico and a whole lot of other countries, too. You respect the laws of your host country. And if you don't, then why would you expect one major political party to bend over backward to accommodate your illegal conduct? Something I'm kind of incapable of understanding. But But I guess I'm not a liberal anymore anyway. During his lengthy immigration policy speech on Wednesday night, Trump said his new special deportation task force, they put that in quotation marks, would focus on deporting criminals, gang members, security threats, and immigrants who have overstayed their visas. How dare he? Now, are you guys down there at Fusion, are you in favor of deporting gang members, criminals, security threats? Are those okay with you? But not people that overstay their visas because they're much better or something? Is that what you're pretending here? Last year alone, nearly 500,000 individuals overstayed their temporary visas. Removing these overstays will be a top priority of my administration. You know that several, if not more, of the September 11th hijackers were here legally, came into the country on visas, which they then overstayed. I'm puzzled by Democrats these days and liberals. What other laws would you like to completely ignore? What other, anything else? Is there another category of laws that you'd like to completely ignore? President Obama's been releasing a lot of people from prisons lately by executive fiat, of course, because they're just drug offenders. They're just drug offenders. Of course, most of the violence in the United States of America, most of the violent crime in the United States of America comes about as a result of gangs, drugs, the drug money, and the gunfights that ensue and all of that good stuff. You know, I've got to say that this doesn't rankle me because it wasn't about targeting people from Mexico. That's not really what this is about. There are millions and millions of people in the country illegally in a time of a rising tide of radical Islam. We had the Pulse nightclub. By the way, you know, Omar Mateen, the Pulse nightclub guy, this is something that nobody ever asks Hillary about, was a Hillary supporter. He murdered 49 people at the gay Pulse nightclub in Orlando. And he, according to his best friend being interviewed in the New York Times, said his friend said that he was a Bernie supporter, but that Omar Mateen was a Hillary supporter. And I promise you, if the news media went to his house, his car was in the driveway, and there were Obama and Hillary bumper stickers on it, that videotape would never see the light of day, because that's how that works. That's the name of that tune, as Beretta used to say. But Donald Trump, well, there's some, David Duke, what a rectal aperture that man is. Can we just put him to rest and be done with him? David Duke says he supports Donald Trump. Well, Donald Trump doesn't endorse David Duke. Next question. But Omar Mateen was a big supporter of Hillary Clinton, according to his best friend. And somehow that never makes it into the Q&A when, of course, Hillary doesn't subject herself to any Q&A, does she? No, she doesn't. And that's fine with the press, too. What is it, 270, how many days? 275 days, 274 days since Hillary Clinton held a press conference? And then they pretend that they, and who is it, Tim Kaine lied a couple of days ago. Well, Hillary held a press conference with the black and Hispanic journalists thing. I challenge anyone to show me a press conference taking place there. There are a couple of questions like, gosh, you're neat. How did you become so neat? And how many times can I vote for you? They had it was a total kiss up, and it wasn't billed as a press conference. And after the fact, when people made fun of the so-called journalists, the minority journalists, is there a white journalists association anywhere? When people made fun of the black journalists, the Hispanic, Latino journalists association, and for their existence, and then for having this event where they just sucked up to Hillary Clinton for a little while, they said, well, look, it wasn't a press conference. And I can show you videotape of them saying, well, this wasn't a press conference. You can't hold them to that standard. This isn't a press conference. And then Tim Kaine comes out and said, well, she held a press conference when she went to they just talk out of both sides of their pie holes nonstop. And they get away with it pretty much every time because they're talking to CNN and MSNBC. And that's how that goes. Speaking of Dwayne Wade, I love this whole Dwayne Wade, Donald Trump thing. It was a very tragic situation. Dwayne Wade, who plays for the Chicago Bulls, professional basketball player, lives in Chicago. His cousin was murdered by gangbangers, one of whom was wearing his ankle bracelet because he was out on parole, and the other, they were two brothers, had the ankle bracelet removed so he could go out and look for a job. They just forgot that his job was shooting people. So he went out, and these two brothers, they went out, and they were shooting at somebody on the street. And oops, accidentally shot NBA player Dwayne Wade's cousin, a woman named Nikea Aldridge. She was walking down the street, sweet as you please, minding her own business, pushing a baby stroller with her baby in it. She is a mother of 4, and she was shot 4 times. Now, how does that even happen? You accidentally shoot somebody out on the street once, but it's like, oh, I accidentally shot her. Oh, I accidentally shot her a second time. Oh, third. Oh, God, I'm sorry, I shot you 4 times. I was aiming for that guy over there. You know, gun control means hitting what you're aiming at. All right, let's start with that. So the Politico has a story that Dwayne Wade is upset, says the Trump tweet. Donald Trump tweeted about it because he's been saying in some neighborhoods in America, and talking about African-American neighborhoods in particular, you can get shot just for walking down the street. And it's, oh, come on. And the Democrats, they say, oh, that's ridiculous. So obviously it happens all the time, especially in Chicago. And along comes this situation, which the news media suddenly paid attention to only because she was the cousin of an NBA player. It is in the news. Donald Trump sees it. He sent out a tweet about it. And his tweet was not something that I would have sent. In fact, I'd take his Twitter machine away from him. He tweeted out, Dwayne Wade's cousin was just shot and killed walking her baby in Chicago. Just what I've been saying. Little ham-handed, I'll give you. African Americans will vote Trump. Vote Trump in caps with an exclamation mark. I don't really do a lot of exclamation marks myself, but I consider it to be kind of, I don't know, high school girl or something. 2 or 3 exclamation marks. That's better. No, I don't really do that. But in any case, and then he was attacked. Oh, how dare you politicize this? Well, really? How dare you ignore it? Huh? I mean, for how long are we going to? And the problem is, of course, it's a Democrat city. It has been since the Civil War or something. Crooked Democrats, the dead vote. I have cousins that register, that have in the past, I don't know if they do it anymore, register tombstones to vote. I have relatives, actual relatives in Chicago that laugh about it and tell jokes about registering tombstones. And then the tombstones show up and vote on Election Day in Chicago. It goes on all over the place. They love that stuff. It's corrupt. It's crooked. It's the Democrat Party. It's like Aleppo, Syria, when it comes to the dangers and all this stuff. And now Dwayne Wade is a little angry about this. In his first comment since Donald Trump marked the shooting death of his cousin in Chicago with a tweet declaring it more evidence that African Americans would vote for Trump, basketball star Dwayne Wade said the Republican nominee's message left him feeling, quote, kind of conflicted. Kind of conflicted. I'm kind of conflicted every day. You know, it's like on the one hand, he said, your cousin's death is used as a ploy for political gain. Wayne told ABC News' George Stephanopoulos, who's a Clinton administration official, just by the way, welcome to the Soviet Union, in an interview airing Friday on Good Morning America. But Wade acknowledged that the violence in his hometown of Chicago is a national story, adding, I want eyes on this city. Well, let me tell you something. The only way to get eyes on this city is to pay attention to stuff like this. So Donald Trump got eyes on the city. Now the Democrats will bury it again, just like they bury all those people in Chicago. We'll be right back.
Name of the movie, the title of the movie is Greater. One word, Greater. I have to tell you, I watched the movie last night. I can't believe that I had not heard of Brandon Bulsworth or the story. You know me, I'm the most informed man in America. But I'm not a college football devotee, so that may be it. But I stopped short in listing some of the awards. There's the Brandon Burlsworth Award, given out yearly to a male or female at Harrison Haskell and the University of Arkansas. There's the Burlsworth Trophy, created in 2010, named in his honor. It's given yearly to the most outstanding Division I college football player who began his career as a walk-on. There are numerous foundations and charities associated with the not disabilities, but the challenges that Burlsworth had to overcome to succeed. Now, it wouldn't be what it is if all there was athletic achievement, which is phenomenal, but it was the kind of person he was. He is the most famous walk-on success story in college football. And to this day, there is a national award given to the college football player who achieves the most as a walk-on every year. He was teased, he was ridiculed, he was bullied, he was laughed at, he was told he couldn't do it, and he never stopped smiling. The personality that Brandon Bulsworth had throughout all of this adversity as portrayed in this movie, which, by the way, is a multi-year project. A lot of heart and soul has gone into the making of this movie. Neil McDonough is the lead actor, plays the brother, the much older brother. You know, the thing about this, folks, I mean, what this really is an incredible, genuinely incredible story about the values that you and I all hold dear, that we hold on to, that we to this day trust make the difference in success and failure, happiness and misery, hard work, perseverance, competition, leadership, faith. All of that takes place in this movie with SEC football as the backdrop, because this man's life was culminated with his success story at Arkansas. You can't help but be moved by this. It could have been cheesy. It isn't. It's inspiring. This is backbone of Americans. And when I describe on this program talking to you about the people who make this country work, it's things like this that I have in mind. People that come from places in the country you've not heard of, who are just out living and trying to do the best they can. No connections, no networking. Nobody knew anybody. Nobody in his family knew anybody to call at Arkansas. You had to earn every step of it.
That was, of course, obviously Rush Limbaugh talking about the movie Greater, which is in theaters now. And we have with us on the line Nick Searcy, who is an actor in the movie. Rush Limbaugh loves this movie. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I'm going to have to find it and go check it out. We're also going to have Marty Burlsworth on, who's the older brother of the featured character, Brandon Burlsworth, with an extraordinary story, as you're just hearing Rush Limbaugh describe. And Nick, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Chris. It's really an honor, and Rush has just been amazing in his support and love for this movie. I mean, I had hoped he would have this reaction when I sent it to him, and we're just so proud and pleased that he has.
Well, this is the kind of movie that really doesn't come along very often, right? I mean, Hollywood is not in the habit of making movies like this. It kind of, because football is a backdrop, it kind of reminds me of maybe a Rudy, that type of story, but a very different character, certainly than Rudy. Why don't you tell me about what this movie's, is it about football? Is it about something else?
Well, I mean, I think the movie is pretty aptly titled in Greater. It's about football, but of course the movie addresses a universal and deeper issue, and you know, always in tragedies like this. I mean, Brandon Burlsworth was killed in an auto accident at age 22, and I don't think I'm giving anything away by that. The movie opens with that, but you know, the fact of the matter is, whenever something happens like that, the questions that you immediately go to are, why did this happen? Why? What kind of a God would allow something this unfair to occur? And I think that's really ultimately what the movie is about, not only what Brandon Burlsworth's life meant, but is there a greater meaning in all of this life for all of us? And, yeah, most movies aren't that ambitious. Right.
So this is, it's about, is it spiritual? Is it religious? Is it values-based movie? Is that what is the underpinning,
you
the
could
theme?
Call it that, but there's something about this movie that's different from a lot of the traditionalist values, you know, what's called a faith-based film, in that his Brandon Burlsworth Christianity and his spiritual life is just part of the story. There's no way to tell the story without telling that. So it's not something that's been imposed on it. It's not some story that somebody set out to try to prove a certain point. It's integral to the story. His faith is part of why he is who he is. And I think that also makes the movie unique among this category of films.
What is your character in the film? What do you play?
Well, yeah, I play a character called the Farmer, and I'm sort of this mysterious guest that shows up at the funeral and talks to Marty Burlsworth. And I jokingly tell people that I'm sort of the voice of reason in the movie.
But it's a key role. It's an integral role. It's very important to the telling of the story.
Well, I think one of the unique things about this movie that also sets it apart is that it doesn't shy away from the concept of doubt. and it addresses it head on, because I think whenever any sort of tragedy like this happens in a person's life, doubt springs in. You have to deal with that. You have to confront the fact that you're facing an unfair universe, and how, the questions raised in the movie, how could God allow this to occur? How can God allow injustice to occur in the world? And I think this movie doesn't shy away from that, and that's sort of what my character brings to it.
Now, this is a project that, as Rush was saying, it was years in the making. It took years to get it done. Is Hollywood writ large treating this movie? Is it getting broad release? Is it and it's in theaters now. It's Labor Day weekend, looking to do well this weekend around the country, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of movie that has to kind of begin outside of the Hollywood system. We're in a few select theaters right now, and this weekend is very crucial. And what Rush has done by giving us this platform is to allow us to get the word out, because a movie like this has to spread by word of mouth. It doesn't have a budget for a lot of advertising dollars. And the more people that go and see this movie and support it, the more Hollywood is going to sit up and take notice and say, well, there's money to be made in those kind of movies. Maybe we need to do more of them, because
I need to figure that out.
One thing Hollywood never.
Let me ask you to hang on for a second. Let me ask you to hang on for a second through the break, if I could. We're going to come back with Marty Burlsworth also. All right, we have on the line Nick Searcy, who is an actor, star of stage and screen. I don't know if you actually do stage or not. The movie Greater in theaters now. A great story of a college football walk-on, Brandon Burlsworth. An inspiring story, not the kind of thing that Hollywood normally produces. And it's in theaters today, this weekend. Got to get out and see it and support this noble cause. And also we have Marty on the line. Is that Mr. Busnerdly? And Marty Burlsworth, the older brother of Brandon Burlsworth, also on the line. So we've got what I think in the Clinton house they call a little three-way going here. So thanks for being here, Marty. I appreciate you taking the time. And
absolutely.
And Nick,
thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Now, why don't you tell us the story of your brother and why this movie matters?
Well, we're just proud and certainly honored that the desire was there to make a movie about Brandon. We certainly, as a family, felt like it needed to be done. I mean, Brandon worked very hard. He came out of Harrison High School, Harrison, Arkansas, as a walk-on football player at the University of Arkansas in 1994. Mm-hmm. Came in way overweight, worked extremely hard to get that weight off. He actually put that weight on purpose to get bigger for football. But, finished his career as a scholarship player, a 3-year starter, finished also as a first-team All-American, and was a 63rd overall pick by the Indianapolis Colts. And, you look back, and this is from a guy that did not have one Division I scholarship offer. So, I mean, quite a work ethic and quite a story from a former walk-on.
Yeah, and he started out, I was reading about him, and said he was 300 pounds, but he wasn't solid rock. He was kind of pudgy.
No.
So they
exactly.
shaved 40 pounds off of him, and then he put the 40 pounds, and he got lean and strong, and then put 40 more pounds back on, but all muscle this time. So 300 pounds of solid Arkansas rock, and then to the Indianapolis Colts, and it's looking like a brilliant life. And then tragically, 1999, age of 22, killed in a car accident, and you and your family must have been devastated.
Yeah, and absolutely, and that's one thing. Greater, the movie does such a fantastic job on is how do you? I know the big challenge was how do you put this script together where you leave the theater feeling good, and they did it. I mean, they really did it. Nick Searcy and Neil McDonough, everybody that worked on this project, I know they're all very proud of it. I know our family is proud of it, because you leave the theater inspired. It's an incredible story, and we've heard over and over again since it's open. The reviews are just, tremendous, just because of what he stood for, how he kept his faith first, and then had faith in himself, and wouldn't listen to doubters saying that you're not good enough, you can't do this. Why are you even trying? That wasn't Brandon. Brandon was just going to be the one that overcame, and people across the nation are learning that, and that's, hopefully this weekend, I know, like Nick said, that they'll get out in mass numbers this weekend to experience this life and what Brandon, the example he set.
And this is a movie that started kind of outside the conventional Hollywood system. It started slow, and I know Rush Limbaugh has taken it up, and I'm sure that all by itself has helped a great deal. But Hollywood didn't put it out there as a major, massive blockbuster in thousands of theaters.
No, it certainly started out on a smaller scale. Now we are in several states, and we want to stay in those states, and we really need, the public that believe in this message to be out this weekend, fill those theaters up so that we can get Brandon's message out to more theaters across the country. We really want this. We think this is something that our country needs, that there's good things, that there are good people out there and that, are really trying to do things right. But I know we had talked to producers out of Hollywood years ago about doing Brandon's movie, and no one could give us, our family, any assurance that his movie or that his life story would be told in the way we wanted to. They couldn't give us any assurance that his faith would remain in the film. And if you take that away, you take Brandon away. So, that was just such a part of him, and that's what he leaned on. And, it's just an incredible story of overcoming obstacle after obstacle. And we really think the masses need to see this film. It needs to be in every state in the country.
Well, it's such a rarity that Hollywood produces movies as the movie that you describe, that, that it is a remarkable thing. Look, Brandon, you're wonderful. Were you involved in the making of the motion picture? You hang out with the Hollywood people and do all that stuff?
Myself?
Yes, you yourself.
Oh, I've got to be on set a little bit. That's about it. I'm learning how to hang out. I got to see Nick last week, so that was pretty cool. Nick did a tremendous job in the film. I mean, such an integral part of the movie. It really all comes together. David Hunt, Brian Randall, that did the script, just did an incredible job. I mean, I can't say how happy we are as our family, because as my mother said, Brandon's message comes through, and that's what's most important to us.
Well, it's a very important film. It's something that needs more attention. It needs it's like the movie Rudy is where I keep going because it was a football movie. But this is a different sort of tale, and it's the type of tale that is not told nearly frequently enough. And listen, Marty, I'm sorry. Marty, thank you for being here with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. Thanks, Rush. Thanks to everybody that has helped to get the word out on this movie. Let's all get behind it, and hopefully we'll be just seeing really great things. All
right. Marty Burlsworth, thank you very much for being here, brother of Brandon Burlsworth. And Nick Searcy, appreciate your time. Really appreciate your being with us today.
Well, thank you, Chris. And I just want to remind everybody there's one more added bonus about this movie that means they need to go see it this weekend, and that's that I am in it.
You are a Hollywood guy.
That's right.
Say, I am in it, and therefore you must go see it.
You must see it.
All right, Nick, sir, don't wait for it to come out on DVD. Don't wait for it to go on cable. Because honestly, when movies come out like this, and we're going to have Dinesh D'Souza on in a little bit. When these movies come out, Americans, people of faith, good people need to go out and see these movies and establish the fact, and it is a fact, that if Hollywood puts these movies out, if they produce these movies, invest the money and the time and the energy, and put them in broad distribution, that they do very well. Look, Hollywood, in the end, is a business town. It's a one business town. And if they're making money, if they see they can make money doing films that take into account people's faith, pro-American films, then they will make those films. They might be reluctant, but if they can make a lot of money, they'll do the films. So, Marty, Nick, thank you guys very much. I appreciate you both being here.
My pleasure.
The film is called Greater. It's in theaters now, and you need to check it on the Google machine and get out there and buy your tickets. All right, we're back. This is Chris Plant sitting in for Rush Limbaugh today. Rush will be back on Tuesday after the Labor Day holiday weekend. Couple of days off, do some stuff, not worry about it for a couple of hours. And on the line, because we have another kind of an amazing movie story, and this is an amazing movie story. The Dinesh D'Souza movie, Hillary's America, there was Obama's America, and Hillary's America now was in theaters, and Dinesh D'Souza is with us right now. And Hillary's America, Dinesh D'Souza's latest movie, is quite remarkable for a whole range of reasons. And we went and saw it. My best girl and I went and saw it the moment it came out, and we may have to go see it again now that it's back in theaters. And I'm definitely going to buy the DVD, and I might buy some to give away as gifts to people who are voting Democrat and don't know what they're talking about on any of the major subjects that we're discussing right now. But Dinesh, thanks for being here today.
It's great to be on the show. It's exciting because our movie is being re-released this weekend, starting today in 400 theaters around the country, and that's very unusual for a movie. It reflects very strong demand and also the timeliness of the movie, which is sort of ground zero of the election debate, with Trump having jumped all over a number of themes that we stress in the movie.
Yeah, and the subtitle of the movie is great. Hillary's America: The Secret History of the Democratic Party. This is, I don't know if you've been asked this. Why is their history a secret?
It's a secret because the progressive Democrats dominate academia, the media, and Hollywood. And when you control those three megaphones, you can put out a lot of disinformation. So they've told a kind of fanciful story about American politics in which the South and the white guy and America are the villains, whereas in fact it's the Democratic Party that is the actual perpetrator of many of the vilest deeds of American history.
Well, I would go beyond many. I'd take almost, when it comes to racial blights on our history, virtually every single one of them is traceable back to a Democrat. From the Trail of Tears and the moving of the Indian tribes, Andrew Jackson, through FDR throwing the Japanese into internment camps in World War II, and every blight you look at, Sheriff Bull Connor. I think you need to make a part two of this movie, because there's a lot more to throw in. You did a beautiful job, and it's starting out with showing you going through the Obama administration, putting you in jail, and all of this, and it's remarkable to watch, and it's very watchable, and it's easily digested, the information that you provide. But there's a part two in there because you didn't get everything in. I know it's impossible in 2 hours to get every sin and crime of the Democrat Party.
The headlines are changing every day, and here's Hillary accusing Donald Trump of being associated with the KKK.
Right.
This is based upon 5 toothless white supremacists who endorsed Trump. Now, the Democrats started the Klan. They revived the Klan in the early part of the 20th century. All the thousands of people who have been hunted down, burned, and killed by the Klan, these people were killed by Democrats. The vast majority of Grand Dragons and leaders of the Klan have been Democrats. And the Democrats lionized their Klansmen. I mean, when Robert Byrd died in 2010, Hillary called him her mentor. Bill Clinton was there praising him at his funeral. Meanwhile, David Duke is firmly repudiated by the Republican Party. So Trump is being blamed for something that has nothing to do with him.
Yeah, the Klan Bake, as it was called, the Democratic Convention in 1924, where they kind of breathed life back into the KKK, which had gone away, but the Democrat Convention brought it back. That was here in New York, I believe, and the rallies in New Jersey and so on. And through the 1960s, when I was a small child, Sheriff Bull Connor was an elected Democrat, and he was a leader in the Democratic Party statewide who led a walkout at the National Convention, standing in schoolhouse doors. Orville Faubus at Central High in Little Rock, Democrat. Republican Dwight Eisenhower sent down the 101st Airborne to move the Democrat out of the way. The schoolhouse door. George Wallace, Democrat, standing in the schoolhouse door in Alabama. It just goes on and on and on and on. And if you're looking for a Republican playing a role in this, you're looking for the people that were pushing the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act over the objection of people like Al Gore's father and Richard Russell of Georgia, who the Democrats named a building after on Capitol Hill.
Well, this is very powerful information for Republicans and conservatives. It essentially gives us the high ground in the race debate and strips the moral capital away from the Democratic Party. Because the Democratic Party perpetrates this myth, look, the South used to be Democratic and it used to be racist, but it's now Republican, and therefore all the racists have now become Republicans. Nonsense. The South became Republican in the 70s and 80s because of the Reaganite appeal of patriotism and free market. So this is a smear smear on the South being done by the progressive Democrats to cover up their own dirty hands and their own dirty tracks.
That's precisely right. Exactly right. And all early political leaders, African-American political leaders in the United States were Republicans. And it's, they've got I mentioned the Richard Russell Senate office building on Capitol Hill. Richard Russell was a dedicated segregationist and racist, and the building, honestly, shouldn't be named after him to this day. And I've suggested that they rename the building after Hiram Revels, who you no doubt know, the first African-American member of the Senate, who was, of course, a Republican.
Well, Trump is having an African-American roundtable today, and he made the remarkable statement that the Republican Party is the natural home of African-Americans. That's a very powerful thing that Trump is doing. No Republican candidate in my lifetime has gone in this direction. I'd like to urge people to see the movie this weekend because that puts fuel in our rocket, helps us get to more theaters, and helps the movie reach independents and Democrats. So our website is just Hillary'sAmericaTheMovie.com.
And you also laid out the case of several individuals in your movie of early African-American Republicans fighting for civil rights, for freed slaves, and so on. And of course, they're all Republicans, and some beautiful storytelling of beautiful stories in the film.
We tried to make a movie that's not only informative but entertaining and moving, and it's amazing to see how at the end of every performance, doesn't matter what your politics are, we see the whole theater stand up and applaud. And how often do you see that in a movie these days?
Yeah, essentially never. So it is coming back out, and there are some great headlines. Hillary's America hitting screens again as race heats. Hillary's America getting theatrical re-release due to popular demand. These are the headlines that are out there, and I have seen the movie. I did rush out to see it. I want to support this movie and movies like it, and I can't recommend the movie highly enough, quite honestly. Dinesh D'Souza.
It's a great weekend to go see a movie, and if I may say so, Hillary'sAmericaTheMovie.com. That's where you can plug in your zip code and see where it's playing near you.
All right, there it is. Dinesh D'Souza, thanks for being with us. I appreciate your time, and this is another one people need to get out and see and support for America, dagnabbit. Thanks, Dinesh.
Thank you.
I'm going to take a quick one here. We'll be back. I've got good news. After Barack Obama leaves the presidency in January, he's going to keep working on the climate. So we got that, and it's a good thing. I'm glad that he'd be doing something like that, something benign that will have no consequence whatsoever. He can continue to push for the slow of the rise of the oceans. That was one of his promises. Has he made good? I wonder if Matt Lauer and the gang at the end of Barack Obama's presidency are going to put together a scorecard. He said he would slow the rise of the oceans. Has he? He said he would heal the planet. But has he healed the planet? Baracus Husseinus Obamas. Healer. I can't wait. He is going to be gone soon, and the clock is starting to tick out loud like Marissa Tomei's biological clock, and you can hear it's the last this and the last that, and the last vacation in Hawaii, the last vacation on Martha's Vineyard. Oh, it's kind of sad, isn't it? It's terribly sad. It's tragic. As long as we don't get Hillary and Bill back in the White House, will Hillary, do you think, use the Resolute desk, the Oval Office desk that her husband used with Monica Lewinsky and all that? You think maybe she's going to have to go to Office Depot and get a new desk of some kind? I'm Chris Plant. I'll see you next time.